too.
No,
Do you have
Go ahead.
something other than
meeting of the December 5th meeting of the State Board of Education is called to order. It is now 5 o'clock. Town Hall, we have a forum.
Madam President, you have quorum.
First item, you ready for the?
Yeah.
Vice President is in the Herald.
Go ahead.
I got wedding in
Yeah, he got wedding.
TikTok.
I'm sorry, so
He getting married on Saturday, so.
congratulations.
Yes, thank
I'm gonna look
you.
in the window.
someone get that.
Where's the window?
I mean, maybe five.
Oh, I'm looking in the window.
Okay, so thank you. So in your packets, you have the synthesis report that the staff and our partners at Empower Ed put together related to the forum that we had last week at Walker Jones Education Campus. Since we're projecting live for everyone, I wanted to wave to everyone at Walker Jones and thank them again for hosting us. They did a fantastic job. The staff was incredibly helpful from start to finish. Even when we found out about 20 minutes before the forum that we had double booked the room, and we had to punt DimPed out to a different room because we were already set up. So yay for early planning and being there on time. That's great. But I wanted to go over some of what we learned at the forum, and then note what the next steps are, which we discussed in our last working session, but I want to go over them again just to make sure that everyone understands. So what we did with the forum, for those who weren't able to be there, is we split up into small groups. We had a facilitator at each group that was helping to bring out conversation and make sure everyone had a chance to be heard. And we were really focused. We sent out pre-reading to everyone who registered. We had about 140 people register and about 100 were in attendance, which is fantastic. And we sent out a lot of material for everyone to read prior to the forum. And it was very much research-based information on what teacher retention is, how it affects student achievement, and all those types of things, including the article from the Washingtonian that we put in your packets a couple months ago as well, for you to read about individual teachers' experiences and that type of thing. When people registered, we asked them to identify themselves by were they a student, were they a parent, were they a teacher, were they a principal, all those types of things. And we took that information and we categorized everyone and put little sort of dots onto their name tags so that we could make sure that we had a good representation of all of the groups at each table, which was very helpful, I think, for the conversation, making sure that the conversations were coming at the issue from different areas and different thoughts, so that we could really get into comprehensive types of statewide solutions. So at the end of the presentations from Scott Goldstein at Empower Ed and Ryan Saunders at LPI, which were fairly short, we spent most of the time of the forum in discussion, more than an hour of discussion about really focusing on the solutions part, which was, I think, very helpful. And then each group, which we had 12 different tables, I believe, of 8 to 10 people at each table, wrote out all the solutions that table had come up with, and we put them around the room so that everyone had a chance to go around and read what everyone else had said, and then indicate through a gallery walk. We gave each of them a single sticker to indicate which was their favorite solution of the ones that they did not come up with themselves at their tables. And then we took all of that information, and the staff synthesized it down, and that's what this document is in front of you, which is the synthesis of the small group discussions. We combined the ones that were very similar. We refined some of the language to make sure that it applied to our situation, and we put it together into this document with in 5 categories. And then each of these we loaded onto a website called TriCiter. And TriCiter has been used by DCPS and other groups in the past to solicit information and comments specifically about this type of thing, getting people engaged in the process of development of policies and solutions and those types of things. And so what we did with our partners at Empower Ed is we went through these and created a new in Tri-Cider, you put everything as an idea, and then every idea, the public can come and put in pros or cons to that idea, and then also vote them up or down if they like them or if they don't like them. And at the end, we'll take all of that information and create some recommendations for the board to consider at our next, at the public meeting in December, as well as then in future actions. Now, some of the things that we might look at may not be something that the board itself has direct authority over, but the recommendations can be made then from the board out to the council or to the mayor or whoever to take additional actions on these solutions that the public has had a chance to weigh in on, that are not sector specific, they're not school specific. They really are statewide type programs or thoughts about how to change the way that we operate and encourage our teachers to grow in their classrooms as well as throughout their careers. So I'd like to take a moment and for the members and students who are able to be at the forum to give you guys an opportunity to talk about your experiences at the tables that you were facilitating. I kind of deputized all of the board members and Tatiana to take over some facilitation duties at the table. So I'd like to hear your impressions of the discussion. Anyone?
All right. I'll start. At our table, well, the purpose was not to hear what's wrong, because we know what's basically what's wrong. We were looking for solutions versus a session about what's going on. But some of the things that came out in a positive light is the lack of mentorship, the lack of classroom support, especially when you have students who have behavioral issues, the lack of clarity on how to reach those students, the lack of support in dealing with those students. So we talked about solutions to classroom discipline, having some types of in-school discipline that are actually helpful, not just pulling them from the classroom and not having anything to do, but having the supports to support those children when they're not in the classroom. We talked about teacher mentoring, or co-teaching, having a highly effective teacher working with a new teacher. I looked at the Chicago model where the first year of teaching, they have a mentor. They pay teach for the first year until they get used to working with students. So we came up with those kind of different kind of approaches, supporting the teachers, but not only the teachers in the building, but the principals, the leaders, having the teachers have normal interaction, a positive interaction with the leadership, and the leadership supporting them as they do that, and teachers having input into creating the atmosphere at the school.
And I'll just say, I think those were pretty similar conversations we had at our table, but even when we wrote kind of the top solutions on chart paper and posted them around the room, and folks were able to walk around and see what each table had discussed, I was actually surprised but encouraged that a lot of the solutions were pretty similar. That even though there were these different conversations had around the room, it seemed like that there was a consensus from policymakers to teachers to advocates to parents about what some of the possible solutions were. And I think it gave a pretty solid blueprint of some of the things that we could recommend, but also solid recommendations on how we can all move forward and better support them. And I was really encouraged just to have teachers sit at the table and say, I love my job. These things, if I had these things, if I had these tools, if I had these opportunities, I could be so much better for my students. And so now it was a really great conversation.
Could I interject just quickly on having that teacher voice at the table? I think we've got our soon-to-be colleague, Fraser O'Leary, has joined us. And we want to welcome you, and we're looking forward to you getting sworn in and joining us us here at the table.
Okay, with the table I facilitated, it was mainly like DCPS people. Well, yeah, it was no charter people. But one of the main takeaways that I had in terms of teacher retention was the impact on the impact system to DCPS teachers and other employees. And they said that there's a development piece that's not really used in schools. So when you're low, what would they say? You're not effective. Yeah, it's not highly effective. It's a development piece that's supposed to help you get there, and it's not really used in schools. So they talked about like different mentoring programs that could be implemented, and having they said three levels of it. The first level was new teachers. The second level was teachers that weren't highly effective, and the third was administrators that also needed the help. And it really spoke to me, to hear the teachers advocate for their peers that, just are having troubles.
So I would echo all of those things that came up. I was at the table with teachers, public charter, and one former DC teacher who now teaches in PG County. The other thing, though, that I would add is there was a lot of conversation about ways that we could, as a city, provide incentives to encourage and allow more teachers to live in the city, in the neighborhoods where they teach and serve. Things like tax breaks for housing, but also increasing the tax breaks for purchases of educational supplies and things like that.
Echo everything. The one thing that I thought was interesting is that there was a lot of discussion about the residency programs and different kind of mentorship programs, as in the other group, and a lot of these exist in DC. And part of what was discussed was how in a given school you can have some set of new teachers who were part of an organized mentorship residency program, and then the other teachers aren't. Either the new teachers aren't or the veteran teachers aren't. So you have this situation where some set of teachers are getting this extra support, but in the context of a school where there isn't the extra support, and it's an issue. It's both potentially a model and an issue.
For sure.
And are you going to talk about what next, or is that not today's conversation?
So like I said earlier, we have all of these now uploaded to the website for public
So the
additional comments, and then we've also will be. I'm glad you actually mentioned that. So in your packets as well is a sheet that we prepared. Let me see if I can find this one. Looks like this about needing your feedback, and we will have this on hand at EdFest to hand out to not only the parents and students that are at EdFest, but also, since we have a nice captive audience of every school that's on the lottery, we're also going to provide it to them to make sure that the teachers and parents and teachers and principals also know that we want their feedback too on these types of things. One second, actually, sorry. And then, so from that information, which has the deadline is December 17th for that, we're going to spend December 18th before our public meeting, putting it all together and making some initial recommendations for your information at the December public meeting.
So not just to have flyers, but perhaps at EdFest we could have some laptops or iPads where people could actually fill out the survey right there.
So yes, but so because of the way the Armory works, we have to request electricity for our booths ahead of time, and there's a cost associated with it.
What about an iPad?
And so, well, it's a 6-hour program, and so sometimes we don't have any iPads that the state board owns. We do have some 2-in-1s that we have been using for some purposes, and we will have those on hand. The Wi-Fi is not great, frankly, in that building, and it's another $80 per device that we have to use for high-speed internet at the Armory, which we didn't know that we needed that, and we have to order it ahead of time. So we have not done that this year. But we will have devices available for folks to use. but the survey itself can actually be viewed as well on their phones and those types of things, which is great. We are trying to get information out, and you'll note, Paul has sent out some tweets that I know many of you have already retweeted and sent out to other types of things to gather additional information. We're happy just to put together, if you want some language for a newsletter to send out, or if you want some additional information like that, please let us know, and we'll happily send that on. You can feel free to also use the press release or newsletter that Paul sent out yesterday. Feel free to use any of that language as well. But the idea is certainly to get this information out as broadly as possible. We are going to be asking PCSB and OSSI to put it into their LEA look forward, as well as into the PCSB's, what is it called? Wednesday Bulletin. Yes. To make sure that it is a broad swath of information that we're getting. And we have actually been, we released it yesterday at, I don't remember what time, but within 15 minutes we already had 5 people who had gone on and started adding comments and voting things up and down, and it's really been getting some great interest, which is fantastic. That it really helps to continue the public outreach on it. It's a great question. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, John Paul.
Sure.
Oh, I just have to say, the deputy mayor was at an event I was attending on Monday, and he mentioned our great work about this issue, and praised the state board for taking the initiative.
And so the deputy mayor was at the forum as well, which I thought was really helpful.
So what can we do to, I know we've got language for newsletters and things like that. What can we do in terms of thought leadership around this, around the information that we're collecting, around what work needs to be done in DC, and how can we elevate this a little bit more?
Well, I think some of it is going to have to wait until we get some more information from the surveys,
Okay.
and then determine how to make those recommendations into something actionable, not only by us, but by our colleagues at other agencies or in other branches of government. I mean, some of the recommendations have money attached, right? We're going to have to find money for them, and that isn't something that we can necessarily do directly, but we can help with the conversation, which I think is something that we've been doing pretty effectively so far.
Oh, a new board member?
Hi,
Emily. And who? Frank? Hi, Frank. All right. So now we'll move on to our school report card. Justin and Donna. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us again. We're
We'll always
excited.
have you.
We are excited to be back, and we have an update on the development of the DC school report card. And rather than go through a PowerPoint, what we decided to do tonight was to share with you our resource page, as well as some of the resources that were newly added to the resource page, and give you a sneak peek walkthrough of the report card site, kind of frame by frame of what you will see when the report card launches on Friday.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm ready for it to be Friday, Donna.
I'm not yet. Right now, as most of you, and I'll wait as we're passing some of those around, there are 2 different resources that are being passed around. One is the school report card brochure, and the other is the school transparency and reporting, or STAR framework brochure. So the last time we were here, we showed you our 1-page at-a-glance documents, and that gave you a front and back, very, very high-level overview of both the report card and the accountability framework. This is that second tier, that deeper dive into looking at the report card in terms of its functionality and the components of the report card, and then looking at the STAR framework, looking at the metrics, looking at the calculation, how the STAR framework is calculated, how STAR scores and student group scores are calculated. So all of that is there. There, of course, is a third tier to that, which is on our website, and a lot more resources that I'm going to share with you as well. Our school report card website is www.dcschoolreportcard.org. So as we said, our launch date is Friday. We are looking forward to launching at approximately 11 a.m. We don't have any other details other than that. We're still waiting. But right now we are looking at launching our report card at approximately 11 a.m. So the dcschoolreportcard.org will be live at that point in time, and we hope that you will share that out, that you'll explore and review all of the components of the report card. But in the meantime,
is that separate from My School DC, which
Yes.
is also still separate from the lottery? So we have to go to multiple places still for parents to be able to see what's happening in our city.
well, you can actually, so the report card is going to give you the performance component. It will not give you a direct link to doing the lottery. The role of the report card is not simply about school choice. It's really about starting that conversation and helping people explore and engage in conversations about the performance of our school.
So my concern is that this is a conversation that this board has been having with OSSI and the deputy mayor for years, which is families have to navigate multiple sites. The city has to spend money on multiple sites, and it's confusing for families. They don't know where to go for the information, and none of it is integrated in a way that is forward-facing for families.
The My School DC website, which also has direct links to the application for the lottery, also has a link on each school's heading under the My School DC website, will link you back to the school report card. So there's a direct link there.
You're right, but we've gone from many more. So the park websites, equity reports, those things are all more to
Narrowing down.
You're right. There's one that's something we need to do.
The My School DC will have a direct link back. So when you click on a school under My School DC, you'll be able to click on and go right to that school's report card site if you want to. Probably not the most ideal in terms of end game, but it's a step forward.
And does My School DC also have a link to the lottery? Or to immediately go and select your schools?
They have
The lottery
something
is
on
My
it.
School.
Yeah, the lottery,
Well,
My School
no, I
DC does
know,
run
but
the lottery.
There's three, and I understand,
Yeah.
yeah, but, okay, never mind. So from there, can you immediately, you can get every single school, you can get the report card, and you can immediately put in your selections. So there is one site.
I believe you still have to, and I'm not an expert on My School DC's website, but my understanding is if you're exploring a school in My School DC, you still have to click on the application and fill out the application.
Okay.
So you will have to click on something to go and fill out the application.
So it's more as Jack was describing.
Okay, so
Jack
it
is
is-
right. It's
okay,
two,
so
two
it's
different-
still
two different-
not
It's not fully
integrated. Okay.
But we just, and understand your point, we've gone from, when I started this, literally spreadsheets for each school that you had to read basically line by line like code in a computer to figure out what the data was about the performance of a school, to a much better forward-facing site. And I just want to make sure that the administration at large is thinking about how to streamline all of these tools for families in a way that really makes sense and that certainly complies with federal laws and regulations.
Important thing to do.
Yes.
So as we said, dcschoolreportcard.org is our school report card website. We have had a resources page on our website for many months now, and we have been building the resources that are available for parents, families, educators, community members, anyone who is interested. That is located here, which I have displayed, which is ossi.dc.gov/DC School Report Card. If you go to the OSSI site, it's also on the rotator at the very beginning, so you'll be able to click on it right there. But as you go to this website, we have been adding a lot of resources, and I want to take you through a few of those, and hopefully it will work for us. So you have the overview of the report card, a little description of what the report card is, and then we have broken the report card resources into two different libraries. Many of them have overlapping resources, but we also recognize that people oftentimes come to this site with wearing different hats at different times. And so we have tried to develop resources specific to different audiences. So we have specific resources that have been developed for families and specific resources that we feel may be better suited for educators or different things that educators may be looking for. In addition, on this website, you'll also see a little bit of the history that involves the layout and design and the collaboration that has been done over, at this point, more than a year and a half, almost 2 years with the state board and the ESSA task force and other stakeholders. And you'll still see the links to that information on there as well. If we explore the information for families, you'll see a number of resources. We mentioned the at-a-glance documents that we shared the last time we were here. They are available in 6 languages, currently posted there on our website as well. The STAR Framework brochure is currently in translation. By the time we go live on Friday, those 6 languages for the brochures, both the STAR Framework brochure and the report card brochure, will be added to this website as well. You'll also see that true for the user guide. Our DC School Report Card user guide is currently translated into Spanish. We have the other languages coming, so they'll be available in the 6 languages as well by the time we go live on Friday. And our frequently asked questions, we have a frequently asked questions website for families as well as for educators, and that's also available in Spanish. I do want to take you through, is it? I may have to do it again. Yes.
June. Should we send you a link? Should we send you a link to the video?
No, it's okay. But thank you. That was right there. It was earlier. We have a nice little video somewhere on here. I may just have to-
So one of the things that I think would be very helpful if we're going to show you our small clip, and if you all could share that through your social media, help build a little more information about what
They hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So while Donna's queuing it up, we have like a small information about the report card, and so it would be really helpful if you push this out on your individual social media. So
Should we do this after it's released or now?
Oh, you can do it
I
now.
think you can do it now.
Great.
Build the Christian text.
So we actually have 2 videos. One, which earlier today was posted on the resource page, so we'll find out what happened to it. We have one on the report card and one on the STAR Framework. The STAR Framework will be loaded tomorrow. But this is our report card video. And hopefully you can all hear this.
Parents and families want easy access to reliable, common information about all public schools in
All the
DC.
way up.
The DC School Report Card, an interactive online tool, gives families a look into all public schools in the district. Built by the Office of the State Superintendent of Education in partnership with parents and families, this tool is a step toward a more transparent, equitable DC education system with students at the center of critical decision making. The DC School Report Card provides more than 150 data points on each school, including information about student academic performance, school environment, teacher experience, academic programs and after-school activities,
so that resource was available on our website. We'll make sure it gets put up there before the end of the evening. The other thing that we just released today and that I'm very excited to share with you is what we have titled here as the DC School Report Card Walkthrough. This is also available on our website. We talked about this at the ESSA Task Force, and I think I talked about this a little bit the last time that we were here, that prior to launch, we would have a beta version, if you will, walking through the report card. So there is about a 28-minute video that walks you through and discusses what you'll see page by page. There's also the slides that are downloadable right here. You can view this at your leisure. I will warn you, it is me talking. It's not a professional or anything. So if you don't like my voice, you may want to mute it. Look at the closed captions.
I played it for her today in a meeting, and she did not like that.
Yes. You notice things that you say multiple times over and over again once you get to listen to yourself back. But what I'd like to do tonight is to share with you and take you through our report card. We're very excited about the launch coming up on Friday. Okay. So you just saw the video. You have a little bit of an idea, and you've all been talking for well over a year now about the components of the report card and talking about its look and its feel. And those of you who are involved in the ESSA Task Force have heard probably more than you ever wanted to hear about the report card at this point. But buckle up, you're going to hear more tonight. So the first thing is, as we take a look, we just went through the resources page, and I've listed both of those there, as well as our launch date of December 7th. Website dcschoolreportcard.org. On Friday, when you go to dcschoolreportcard.org, you will enter our website, and this is what you will see. It is what we call the landing page. You have multiple options of ways that you can explore the report cards from this entry portal. You can go right here and enter in the name of a school. You can enter in just a few letters. It'll populate up and give you a list of different schools with those letter configurations to pick from. So even if you don't know the name of the school, you can put that in. If you're not sure what the name of the school is, or you just like to look at it from a map view, you can click on this link right here, and it'll take you to a view of the map of DC, and you'll be able to explore schools in DC using a map. From this landing page, you'll also be able to watch the video that we just watched, so it's embedded there. You'll be able to look at the DC report card. So as you remember, as part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, not only do we produce school report cards, LEA report cards, but also a DC report card. Those will be available throughout the website. There's a direct link to the DC report card there. And down here we have resources. So you'll have the resource page that we just talked about for parents and families, the resource page for educators, and of course, downloadable data. In that downloadable data site, we're going to do something that I think is actually pretty unique for a state agency on the same time in which you launch your report card and accountability system. Not only are we giving downloadable files that give you the opportunity to look at and disaggregate and analyze the data as you would like to, we're also providing a full analysis and overview of the statistical review that we have already done of our system in this year's results. So you'll be able to see distributions in many different ways across the city, across the board, across sectors, a variety of different things. You'll be able to see relationships between student groups and STAR scores, student groups and different metrics. You'll be able to see some regression analysis. You'll be able to see correlations, variances, probably many more types of analysis than some of you would like to dig into, but it's really designed to go from here all the way down into here, give you a depth that you would like to pursue and look at, but then the downloadable data files are there as well, so that people can do their own analysis as well. So all of that will be released at the same time that we launch.
So how does this, sorry Laura, go ahead.
Just thank you, first of all. This is amazing, and thank you for all the work that you put into this. This is just so much better in communications than I know lots of agencies do, than we've seen us do if you at any point are releasing what and I'm not seeing it what you have here, but maybe I'm just not reading this correctly. When you say, for example, academic achievement, of which 20 points are PARC, what gives someone 20 points and what gives them 10 points?
I'll get to that in just a moment. Great question, Melvin. Thank you. I promise you I'll get back to that answer during this presentation.
Just wondering how the number of data points in here and this communication system compares to other states. I know council's a member of chief state school officers, and so there are a lot of conversations that are going on amongst and between state agencies. My gut tells me DC is sort of at the top of the pack here, but I'd love you guys to.
So every state has not yet released their new report card. We saw, obviously earlier this week, Maryland released theirs. We saw yesterday Tennessee released an updated report card, and a number of states have been rolling them out. They have until December 31st to be ESSA compliant with rolling out a new report card. There are some states who have rolled out new report cards and have frankly said, ours is not ESSA compliant, but we're gonna work towards that. One of the things that I am personally proud of is the fact that our report card is ESSA compliant with every component that's required for this year's publication at launch. We will not need to do 2, 3, or 4 iterations of rolling out our report card to be ESSA compliant this year. It's taken a lot more work, but I think it's important that we do the very best that we can every time we do something. So next week, I will actually be going to a chief state school officers meeting with the quote-unquote me's around the country, and we will be talking about our report cards and sharing, so I'll have a better idea of what some other states look like. Probably about a couple of months ago, I had a little bit more time to kind of monitor what some other states' report cards look like. I haven't had that amount of free time to monitor. I have looked at a couple here and there. I've looked at Maryland's when it first came out, and I looked at Tennessee's briefly today, but not in depth. So I will say, looking at ours, I believe I am biased, but I know from looking that we have a lot more information on our report card than I've seen on any of the others I've looked at, with the exception of maybe Ohio. I kind of hold that one up in terms of the way they share information out as a true gold star of state report cards. They've been doing their report card for at least 10 years.
It's always been good.
It's always been great.
And then is the range of information, are some states really sticking to assessments? Are we more robust in terms of what we're sharing out?
We are much more robust in what we're sharing out. Some states have only shared out assessment data. Some states, many states, have not shared out student group information. So they've shared what we call the all students group, or the school average performance, and not disaggregated, which is something that is a requirement of ESSA. But we are also one of 3 states across the country who utilize the flexibilities provided in ESSA to hold schools accountable for student group performance and deliberately put a specific weight on that in our accountability system.
A lot. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Sorry. So, if we were to type in the school name, so we're going to type in Model Academy because all of you are very familiar with that school. Model Academy.
What board is that in?
Yes. This is in, I believe, Ward 4, right, or 6? It's 6.
9.
We're 9.
Yeah, it's 6, right? So this is what we call the profile page, and looking at the profile page, you will see the same profile for every type of school that we have. Some of the information is there for certain types of schools. We have profile pages for adult schools, which clearly do not receive a star rating, nor do they have a parent organization, so you won't see those components on their report card, but the layout and the design of a profile page is essentially the same. So you'll see some general information, you'll see a unique message from the school, information about the parent organization, which as a result of feedback and collaboration was elevated towards the very beginning of that profile page, student population, demographic information, and information about school offerings. So a list of about 13, 15 different school offerings that are selections, and if schools offered something like that, these are the same filter categories that my school DC uses. So there's a similarity there in terms of what parents are used to seeing in terms of looking at the types of school offerings that they can sort from. We utilize that same list. A list of extracurriculars that schools were able to supply to us for this. And then logistics, which includes hours of the school, before school care, after school care, metro, bus, and rail, that type of information is all there. From that, there were 4 pages listed across the top, the first being the profile page. The second is the academic performance summary. In looking at the academic performance summary, you'll see up to 5 different domain areas that you can explore. Academic achievement or student growth, English language proficiency, graduation rates, college and career readiness. Graduation rates, college and career readiness will only be visible for high schools, but then you'll be able to explore and learn more about the performance in those areas by clicking on those links. If we went into student achievement, you'd be able to look at, this case, it is PARCC performance, so that's what we're looking at here. You'll be able to look at the percentage of students that scored PARCC 4 plus, MSA 3 plus. You'll also be able to look one level lower than that and look at PARCC 3 plus and MSA 3 plus, as well as a distribution of all of the different performance levels for that school. If you click on any of the areas that says see details, you'll be able to look at the details of the performance of that metric. That view details operates the same way throughout the entire report card. When you click on that, you'll be able to see the performance across race, ethnicity groups, and student groups. Those student groups include students with disabilities, at-risk students, English learners, children in foster care, homeless students, and military-connected students. All of those student groups which are present in DC that are required under ESSA.
Donna, do you understand we can do that for the proficiency levels and also for the growth of proficiency?
Any place that every single metric where it says view details, there are very, very few metrics where we don't have the ability to disaggregate. As you probably recall, one of the requirements of the accountability system, which is our star rating, requires the disaggregation of all metrics. So every metric that is a part of the star rating, you are able to disaggregate for those student groups that are a part of the star framework. I will caution that children in foster care, homeless students, and military connected are not a part of the accountability system, but they are reported as part of the ESSA required for reporting, but not calculation. So you'll see that on the academic performance and the school environment page. You won't see that on the star page because those are not student groups that are part of the accountability system. So here's an example of academic growth. When you're looking at academic growth, you'll be able to see both median growth percentile for ELA and math, as well as growth to proficiency. Clicking on view details will give you the disaggregated population and the performance of those student groups. English language proficiency, here we're talking about access growth, so the growth that our English learners are making towards attaining the proficiency rate of 5 on that test.
Can I go back?
Yes.
So when you talk about how we can see the homeless, foster, military on some pages, but
So-
not on the performance ones, not on the...
These are performance, but they're not accountability. So accountability is our STAR framework. These are all performance, but they don't factor into the STAR rating. So the pages I'm taking you through first are where we show the performance, and then I'll take you to the calculation of the STAR rating.
But the data that goes into the star rating can be disaggregated
Absolutely.
by these
Yes.
categories.
Absolutely.
And we can see that?
Yes, I'll show you that too.
All right. And does that include, because we went back and forth with you guys on this earlier, that at-risk disaggregates into the different groups, most of which you remember?
At risk
but
is
also-
one category. It doesn't, you don't take students and say that they are SNAP, TANF, and report them separately. They are considered an at-risk student population.
Right, but you're just saying 3 of the categories from at-risk that can be done separately, the foster, the homeless.
On these pages, yes.
And so my question is, can you also do that for TANF and SNAP? I mean,
It's
No.
not.
why
It's not.
not?
It's not on the report card right now. That was some new change. We don't have it that further additional level.
But presumably it would not be a complicated thing to add because you've got it for all the other groups, is that right?
I'm not going to get into the complications of things, but I think that's something that's been raised.
That's something that we could raise.
That's something that it won't be there from Friday, but that's been conveyed before. I wouldn't say I'm not in a position to tell you how complicated it is or not complicated right now.
And so will I be able to look, as an example, because I realize we're on different pages, will I be able to see what the median growth is for the military?
Yes, on this page right here.
Okay.
Well, not this
So
page,
if
currently, this
we
page.
could then get the TANF and this and that, we'd have
Yeah.
exactly what we wanted.
Yeah.
If they had enough military connected
Right.
students to generate a score. Looking at the school environment summary, 5 more domains here that you can explore: attendance, early childhood learning, student enrollment changes, school safety and discipline, teacher and health staff. In attendance, you'll be able to see a variety of information. You'll see 2 chronic absentee measures, 90% plus attendance, so that's the reverse. The inverse, if you will, of chronic absenteeism, attendance growth, in-seat attendance, and if the school offers pre-K, you'll see pre-K in-seat attendance there as well. By clicking on the view details again, you'll be able to see the student group performance. Student enrollment changes. Here you're going to be able to see the re-enrollment metric. You'll also be able to see student mobility. The student mobility is one of the very few metrics. It's not an accountability metric. It's a reported metric. This is one that is not disaggregated. So you'll be able to see the changes of enrollment that take place in a school each month of the school year. The number of students who go in, the number of students who go out. Early childhood learning is represented by the class rating, so the 3 domains of the class tool. School safety and discipline aligns with our discipline collection as well as our federally required civil rights collection. As you remember, that is also a component of ESSA, of reporting that information. One of the unique things that we have the ability to do that some other states don't is we already have a discipline collection. So while some other states are restricted to presenting 2 or 3-year-old data, depending upon what the federal government has released for their state, we actually have, with the exception of one of these items, we actually collect all of this annually, so we're able to show the results from our most current year versus 2015, which is what other states have had to use. The only area that we have to do that is school-related arrests. That was not something that was previously a part of our discipline collection, but we've added it, so we will have current year data on that in the future. Suspensions. One of the things I wanted to call out specifically is you will see the view details for all of these measures as well, which will give you the student group rates. If you click on suspensions, you'll be able to actually look in detail at both in-school and out-of-school suspensions. And you'll be able to see those disaggregated by student group performance. Teacher and health staff information. You'll be able to see the years of experience of teachers for every school throughout DC, and that's the years of experience that they have in the field, not necessarily the years of experience they have at that school. They're broken up into 0 to 1, 2 to 5, 6 to 10, and more than 10. You'll be able to see directly below that what the DC average is. And for DCPS schools, you'll be able to see both the percentage of in-field teachers and certified teachers. Then lastly on this page, you'll see health staff.
Sorry, am I supposed to interrupt? No,
Feel free.
So we had talked about if you were gonna put them in for the DCPS, that it had to at least say for the charters. I understand that they're not required, but it would have to be shown.
It does say that.
Okay.
There's a little information right here. It's a blue box. It says, "Tell me about this measure." You click on that. It's very clear, and it talks about why they are there for DCPS teachers and not there for charter teachers. The best way that we could display it was actually right there. On the health staff, you'll be able to see a variety of health staff information. So these are health staffing roles that are both full-time or part-time. This is information that's collected through the school health profile that's done every year. Moving into the STAR framework. Depending upon the configuration of the school may be measured by multiple grade span frameworks. We've talked about that before. So if you have a pre-K to 8 framework, which is this model academy that we're looking at, you'll be able to see that there are 2 frameworks, an elementary and a middle school framework. On the overall page, you'll get the school level score as well as the rating. And then right below that, you'll see the student group scores. By clicking on any of these tabs here, you'll be able to explore the performance and the STAR rating details within that grade span framework. So we're going to look at the elementary framework for this school. By clicking on the elementary tab, You see the score for the elementary framework, that's pre-K to grade 5. You see the equivalent star rating for the elementary framework. And then you see two different presentations of the data. Looking at the data, you're able to see the performance by metric. The first bar that you see here, and it's kind of hard to see because I tried to fit it all on one page for you, but the first bar that you see is actually the name of a metric. You'll see this is the all student group performance. By clicking on view details, every student group that's present at the school will appear directly below that. You'll see your question, the floor and the target, and you'll see where they are based on that span of floor and target, and that'll show you where they stand between getting the
Can you
floor.
repeat? It was Laura's question.
Oh, it was Laura's question, I'm so sorry.
This was Stephen's question about how many.
Yes, so here we're looking at this, as we're looking at the STAR framework page, you'll be able to look at by metric, and it'll say view details on the metric exploration. You'll see a floor and a target, and you'll see where the school is in that area. You'll be able to click on view details and see additional information about all of the student groups that are there. You also have an option, so we kind of called it a choose your own adventure. Which direction would you like to explore the STAR scores in? Some people wanted to explore by metric, some people wanted to explore by student group. So you can do this same exact exploration by clicking on the student group, which is at the bottom of the page. Click the plus sign there to expand that, and you'll see every metric for that student group. So if you click on one of these metrics and you want to see it in detail, this is what you're going to see. So for example, if you're looking at median growth percentile for mathematics, you'll see what the floor is, what the target is, and you'll see where they stand in there. If they are below the floor, they receive 0 points. If they are above the target or at the target, they've received 100% of those points. So depending upon how many points that metric is available, you can look at that and calculate the points that they received by taking the difference between the floor and the target, and then subtracting the floor from the actual score, and you can calculate what their metric points are. But this gives you a visual representation of where they are in the performance scale between floor and target.
Okay, so can I ask, using this example, so in this example, the range was 31 to 72 for all students. So that 31 to 72 I would see in every school, is that right?
For every school that is pre-K to 5.
Because that's where you all set the range based on the averages that you saw across the city.
So the floor and target for this is median growth percentile is based on the 10th and 90th percentile of the performance that we saw based on our baseline data.
So this is all pretty much relevant to the rest of the schools in the city versus some set of standards of mastery.
It's relative based on the data that was present. So we used the 16-17 data to use as baseline. And so that baseline, those floors and targets, are solid for 3 years. They will not change.
So you won't change, the baseline will always be 16 to 17, even when comparing 19 to 20, is that what you just said?
That is correct. We will reset our...
So it's not growth based on how you did year on year, it's only growth according to 17?
No, the growth is, so this is median growth percentile,
Yeah.
so that is based on your SGPs that are set year to year.
So that is year
But
to
the floor and target, in terms of how we're equating the points, the floor and target will not change for 3 years.
So it's not moving.
So it's not a moving target.
So as the city improves, every year we're gaining 4 points or 3 points.
We will be able to see that here.
It will be the
Yes,
same
cycle.
range though. It will still be 31 to 72 or whatever it is.
Right, so as we see performance move to the right, as we see
We
improvement,
should see all the dots.
we should
moving.
see all the dots move to the right as well.
And so on this one, the at-risk one where you see the dot outside the bar, I should think like, wow, this school is moving some of the kids that have the most disadvantage.
Yes.
Got it. Okay,
They're
thank you.
at the top of the
They're
distribution.
like amazing, right,
Yeah.
because they're outside of it.
So that's a school you want to go to.
I want to go to
because-
Model Academy.
Yes.
B12.
And that's all. That's
Send my
also
kids there.
that's also one of the it's a lot of stuff, but I think you are able to take this information as you get more foot. If you want to visit a school, you can say, all right, what are the proof points in this school? And you can say, hey, I see that you're doing very well with at-risk or SPED in this area, and ask more deliberate questions. That's one of the uses that we.
So,
You just made a good point. So
Maybe no.
Okay, I'll take it back. As a parent, and I'm looking at this information, is there any way here that you say, okay, now that you've made your choices or found several schools that you like, we advise you to visit that school?
So we have actually said multiple times that this is one piece of the information, not the only piece of information. We encourage people to have a conversation with the principal, with the teachers. We haven't come right out and say, go visit the school. Primarily because we're also thinking about this is a way of parents having a conversation with their child's current school. So hopefully they've already visited that school, but this is really about starting a conversation.
I mean, yeah.
So I just, for the record, want to add a point. I'm going through the search for high schools, and we've reached out to multiple schools about scheduling visits to tour, and we've been rejected. So while in theory that's good, schools with wait list are saying that, well, once you apply and you're accepted, you can come visit. Which I believe does a huge disservice to our families and further segregates our schools. So, for the record.
Thank you.
Could I ask you one other thing? So then going back to the points question, sorry if I missed this at the beginning. So if let's say I hit like smack in the middle of this range, of this distribution range, should I assume then that I'm getting half the points?
Yes.
Points? And did you publish anywhere that like, if you're in the first third, you get 3 points. If you're,
There's actually a formula that's in our technical guide that talks about the formula of how metric points are determined. So it's a formula there that talks about your actual value minus the floor divided by the target minus the floor, and then multiplied by the points that are possible. One of the other questions that came from the table was, how do we look at an overall student group? So as I said, this is that choose your own adventure of how you'd like to explore the performance of a school. And in looking at the student group, here I selected at-risk students, and you can see every metric in the STAR framework at one glance for the at-risk population. So you can see, it's hard for you to see from this slide. On Friday, when you go to dcschoolreportcard.org, you'll be able to look at this for any of the schools, and you'll be able to look at a student group and see all of the performance across the metrics. You'll also be able to see the floor and target for each one of those. Here you'll be able to see, for example, I noticed that this school does not have great achievement, which are the first two metrics, but I noticed that their growth, especially in growth to proficiency, is much higher. And it's higher and close to the target or above the target.
And I think what will be interesting about this view, like if you remember, it's been a long time since we talked about content, one of the domains in the future that we simply admitted we weren't very good at was special ed data, and data that was interesting to special ed families. So this view here, you can at the top there, it wouldn't say at risk, it would say special ed, and you're getting a page of data that's just about special ed all in one place to sort of drive better conversations. So that can be a launching point from our future conversations around figuring out special ed.
What does this look like in years 2 and 3 when there are multiple data points?
We'll actually be able to see trend data for each one of those metrics as well.
So, have you figured out how to visually represent that yet? Probably not.
We know, based upon the tool and the design of the tool, how we'll be able to do it. We have a couple different options. Whether we see bars of different colors right underneath, since they are going to have the same floor and target, it'll be easy to represent, showing stacked bars kind of going across and being able to look at it that way so that you can look at colors, or we could look at trend data in terms of points on a graph. So a couple different options to look at. We've been exploring what that could look like. It might look different for different types of metrics depending upon what's most applicable.
This is jumping way ahead, but when you do that, I hope you do like confidence bars, because there'll be so much noise with these numbers jumping back and forth, and you would want people to think, oh, my grade school became terrible this year, vice versa. But like I say, it's looking way forward. And while I'm talking, I'll just say, this looks so terrific. I mean, so terrific to be able to go through. So
Great,
if
glad to hear
it
that.
operates as you're describing, and I'm sure it will, because technology always does, it's really great.
I have to say that, so I actually did talk to Donna earlier this week about when Maryland launched theirs and the platform immediately crashed. I immediately texted Donna, I was like, so we alerted Octo for that this is coming. And
We don't use Octo.
Right, so one, we don't use Octo, but it's also, how many people is it?
Well, when I talked to you, it was different.
Okay.
So we also were concerned about making sure that we could handle capacity and traffic, and so we met with the chief engineers for the platform this morning. And when I talked with you, we had up to 5,000 concurrent users at any one moment in time. We now have 10,000. So that's concurrent users at the same point at the same time, which is more capacity than they actually provided to the state of Texas when they launched their website.
That's great.
I feel we'll be okay.
Yes.
Unless everybody is.
Yes. But it's great. We really appreciate the planning ahead and thinking about those types of things. That's really great.
Yes, it's like Christmas
Sorry.
morning. Everyone's waiting for 11 a.m. on Friday.
And as you tweeted out, we'll have more and more people that are going. Looking at high schools, as we know, there are different metrics that we're going to see at different high schools, but the profile looks the same. So it's going to be a very comforting, familiar look as you go from one school to another. The profile is going to look exactly the same. As I talked about before, when I get to the academic performance, you'll see college and career readiness now, as well as graduation rate. When I look at college and career readiness, that's where you'll be able to see AP and IB, both performance and participation, as well as 2 SAT metrics, college and career readiness benchmark, and the DC percentile. On the graduation rate, when I was producing this, we actually created a fake school. So we didn't populate every single component. And as I was narrating this, I recognized that, oh, we didn't populate 5-year graduation rate. When you pull up any high school, you will see 4-year graduation rate, 5-year graduation rate, and what we call extended year graduation rate. One of the things I want to answer right away about extended year graduation rate is yes, it can be more than 100%. And the reason for that is the extended year graduation rate is looking at the total number of students who graduated that year, no matter what cohort they came from or how many years it took them to graduate. And the denominator is that school's 4-year graduation cohort. The purpose of that measure is to recognize the persistence and the effort that schools are placing in making sure that their students graduate with a high school diploma, no matter how many years it takes them. So it's not an error when you look and you see that band goes up to 130. That is supposed to be like that.
And remember, our accountability system provides points for
Yes.
4 and multiple years of graduation. That's a significant shift from No Child Left Behind.
Yes.
For 5, not for beyond 5.
It's extended year. In our STAR framework, it's 4-year and extended years graduation is where we award points.
Going back to that, is there any way to look at how many students enrolled in a school as freshmen?
That's our 4-year cohort. That's
And-
what that is.
Well, but the cohort changes significantly in many schools. I've seen data that some schools graduate less than 30% of those students who enrolled as freshmen, but yet have a cohort graduation rate of 70, 80%. So that's an interesting data point to me as both policymaker and parent. If I'm making a choice, I want to know that it's going to be a stable, long-term environment for my student.
It was the same question I had, I think, to Joe's point, not just kind of the graduation rate of the cohort, but multi-year retention.
Yes.
I think
So we
what
actually do have a re-enrollment metric. So that will tell you what percentage of the students that are eligible to re-enroll year after year. It's not going to tell you what percentage of 9th graders stayed with and graduated at that school, because sometimes we have 9th graders who entered in the 2013 cohort and they graduate from another school in 2017. They're still part of the 2013 cohort,
Right,
meaning
but
that they graduate high
credited
school in
to
4
a
years.
different school.
But the re-enrollment rate will actually tell you what the retention rate is of students in a school. Not exactly the same information you're looking for, but it kind of gets to that same stability of enrollment.
question, Donna, and this is just kind of related to the collection of like some of the qualitative data. So I think at this point in time, kind of what has been on average kind of the response rate of school communities for some of that qualitative data, and just out of curiosity, how is that data collected from schools?
Yes, great question. So one of the things that we did in our technical guide, which I said was that third layer of really deep, we actually talk about where all of the data comes from and show you where the data source is for each element on the report card. One of the things that we created as a part of this report card was an additional layer of certification and validation of the data. So all of these points have what we call a validation phase and a collection phase already. We did 2 layers beyond that, what we called metric calculation confirmation, where we sent the data that had already been collected and validated through the regular process back out to schools and said, here is the data that we have collected from you that you have validated through whether it be the audit or the enrollment process or a variety of other data collection sources. We are now showing it back to you again. We're asking you to confirm that this data is accurate. So we
Qualitative data, not the test data.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of like parent orgs, like
Yep,
notes
all of
from
that
the
went out as
schools.
well.
But like in terms of kind of where we are in terms of launching Friday
Oh, we did all of that back in August, September, and October, yes.
and the response rate has been good on average for school communities.
One of the things that you will see, especially on the parent data, just to be very transparent, because this is going to be a very transparent tool, is that we have some schools who provided student or parent organization representatives and an email. We went back out to those schools and said, please don't give us that person's personal email. Create a school email for them. We don't want to post their personal email on a report card. So we managed to get that back. Not every school provided a parent representative. Sometimes they simply said, yes, we have a parent organization. And sometimes they simply said, yes, we have one. Sometimes they provided a link if that parent organization had a website, but not all parent organizations do. And some parent organizations have what's called a communication policy. If they had a communication policy, we also linked to that if available. If a school did not provide that information, we decided on the report card to list it as not provided. The only place you will not see parent organization information is for adult schools because it was not applicable. Does that answer your question? Okay. We did the same thing with the message from the school and the extracurricular, all of those things. Everything on this report card went out to schools twice.
Just one more question, just going back to the bands for a second. So this is just all going to correlate with an N size of 10, right?
Correct.
So you can't compare at-risk across the board unless there were at least 10 at-risk students.
That's
versus
correct.
55.
If there was not an N size of 10, you will not see the at-risk subgroup presented.
I'm sorry, I did have another question about the question I had previously. How easy is it for schools to change and update that information even if it's like mid-year or 2 months into the school year? How easy is it for them to update that information?
We will have the opportunity to update periodically, but it's not a snap like that. We have said that we probably will not update the information unless it was an error made on our part, in which we will try to push a data. If there's a data point that's incorrect, an error that we made, we will try to push that as fast as possible. But with the launch of the report card, the next push on that will likely not come until sometime in January. So if there was, and we're not doing a data push for new information. If, for example, the principal is listed, if the principal changes and they change that information in our student information system, so it says who the contact is, we would get that into our student information system. We'd be able to push that out at the next refresh.
Gotcha.
Back to Laura's question about the insights. That's a FERPA. That's a FERPA issue. That's the smallest account that I know of anybody else doing.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was extra anonymity because now you've said a bunch of bands and you have it's like 6 degrees removed from any kind of test score. You know what I mean in terms of identifiability. So then I wondered if I think the devil's in the details for a lot of schools where your school is small, you only have 9 kids taking the test period. Maximum.
Yep.
So in looking at the high school data, as we said, you'll see different metrics. So that was just illustrated there. The same is true for alternative schools. You'll see the same information on the profile page, and then unique metrics that are unique to alternative schools, such as the weighted framework. And instead of re-enrollment, alternative schools look at a measure called re-engagement. which looks at the percentage of students in their school who have re-engaged in school this year that were disengaged from school the prior year. And then this is looking at the same makeup of the STAR framework, no matter which type of school you're looking at. You'll see the same layout where you have the STAR rating, the STAR score. You'll be able to explore by metric or by student group. So going back, that was all if you knew the name of your school, right? So now let's say you didn't and you wanted to go and look at a map. In this case, I'm only looking at 3 schools. Obviously, if this was Friday, you would see many dots all over this map. So in looking at this, you'll be able to explore. You can type in an address at the top if you want. You can select different filters. You can then sort those filters, a quick view of some of the filters. You can select grade spans. You can select multiple grades. So let's say that you are a parent and you want to make sure you're looking for schools that serve 5th grade and 10th grade. That might be important to you. You're able to select both of those and see schools that serve those grades. So you can select multiple, it's not just one or the other. You can select on types of schools. Maybe you're looking for traditional K-12 schools or alternative schools, charter schools, DCPS schools. You can sort. You can filter by type. You can select and filter by ward. You can click on multiple wards if you'd like. You can click on STAR ratings if you'd like. Over to the right are what we call preferences. Does not cut down the number of schools that you're able to see, but allows you to see schools that hit more of the preferences of the things you're looking for. So if you're looking for schools that have a STEM focus or an arts focus, you're able to click on that and see those, and I'll show you what that looks like. You can also click on before school, after school care, as well as the presence of a parent organization. And in doing so, you'd be able to sort alphabetically, sort by preferences, sort by STAR rating, or if you typed in an address, sort by the distance from the address that you typed in. So for example, we said we had 3 schools. So this school up here, this happened to be Model Academy. That's the one you wanted to attend. It met, of the 13 preferences that I selected, it met 9 out of those 13. So that gives me an idea of which of those preferences. I could click on that and find out what they were. You'll also notice that throughout some of the pages, you may have seen in the upper right-hand corner, it said add to compare. There's also a little icon right here. You can click on that. You can click up to 3 and compare the schools side by side based on a set of criteria that were already predetermined. That these were predetermined based on the top items that parents and communities asked to see when we did the engagement that we did over the past year. So over 4,000 data points in terms of getting that in. These were among the top 6 or 7 that parents said they wanted to see. So you'll see before school care, after school care, parent organization in there. You'll see school program information, and a variety of other things are up there as well. You can also download a PDF. It's a one-page at-a-glance, if you will. Obviously, there's a ton of information on the report card. All of it can't go into a one-pager front and back. So this is what we call the at-a-glance report card. It's a one-page PDF. You can click on that. It's available at the top right-hand corner. And you'll get a one-page overview. You'll see all of the information, most of the information from the profile page, and then selected information from the back. It takes different information from each one of those pages we looked at.
Since EdFest is on Saturday, will the one-pager at-a-glances be available, at least to the website? Will be up. So
the website is up. They will be available on the website. If
Great.
schools wanted to print them off on Friday and have them available on Saturday, they could do so.
Great.
We are providing copies.
We're providing a few copies.
A few copies to
That's
each
their-
school so that they have it in front of them when parents come up. Because one of the things, in case you guys didn't remember, this isn't just accessible, easily accessible from a computer. It's also adaptable to your phone or any internet device that you have.
So, one question I've had for years, and I want to know if it's reflected in this, student demographic data. When a school is over a certain percentage of economically disadvantaged, it's reported on my school DC report card and other places as 100%. Are the actual numbers reported in your system, or is it still going to default to that, which creates a misleading perception of the school to parents?
So that was actually a shift that OSSI made this year, and you may have noticed on the park reporting as well. we don't report economically disadvantaged in the same way that was reported in the past, because that was looking at
So
those.
that category is going.
Right,
away.
that's why we're using at-risk now. It's a much more clear reflection of our at-risk population.
So you should say 75 or
Whatever that number is.
We also mentioned the statewide report card, or the DC report. You'll see that it looks very similar. Some of the information is quite unique to the DC report card as required by ESSA. Under teacher experience, for example, you'll see that it's broken down for teacher years of experience by both high poverty and low poverty schools. If you recall from our ESSA plan, the threshold for that is 50% at risk, or for high or higher for high poverty, less than 50% for low poverty schools. And then of course, statewide data on the NAEP. You'll see that every 2-year assessment, both 4th grade and 8th grade data. You'll see historical performance as well as student group performance and long-term goals. So those were long-term goals that were in our ESSA plan, and you'll be able to track the progress of how we are progressing on those long-term goals. You'll see what the goal is, and you'll see a plotted point for the performance. We've already talked about the resources. I know that you guys will have more questions, so I look forward to hearing them. And in the meantime, we have a web or an email address set up for questions, and we hope that you will share that out as well. It's DC School Report Card at dc.gov. So we will have a team of people that will be responding to questions that we receive. We're excited about Friday. Thank you.
So do the principals, are they gonna get a preview of everything? I know they've been back and forth on their qualitative stuff, but will they have a preview of their star rating and how?
They already have.
And they have them right now?
They have a department embargoed release that was provided to them, yes.
And when did they get that?
Principals, the 26th? Yes, 26th of November.
And to that point, and I know LEAs are trying to have conversations with school leaders. Is OSSI having conversations with school leaders? I know about the mechanics of the report card, but for schools that'll maybe have a low star rating, is OSSI having conversations about how schools can explain that and kind of what their path will be to improvement?
Over the last 3 weeks, we have had one-on-one office hours with LEA leaders and school leaders. Those have been conducted by the superintendent, by the chief of staff office, policy office, communications office, as well as myself and the associate superintendent for DAR. So we have been meeting directly one-on-one with LEA leaders and school leaders to answer any questions that they have.
we invite
Good.
LEA chiefs.
And we did a briefing with them as well.
Could I recommend that we expand the definition of school leaders to include PTO and especially LSAT leaders, who have not been included in those conversations?
We could definitely, so one of the things we will do after launch is we will be taking this out on the road and looking for opportunities like that to have conversations with parent community leaders around how they can interpret as well as
Again,
understand.
not parent and community leaders, school leaders that are a part of the school leadership, but are parents.
Okay.
LSAT chairs, LSAT committees are part of the school communities.
But do you envision those being with OSSI, or do you envision those being like with
LSATs are
LEAs or
very concerned about the star rating and what it's going to mean for their school and what impact it's going to have on everything. And there has been very little information that's filtered down from LEAs through principals to LSATs. PTOs are very likely, my experience is even more in the dark about what the school report card actually means.
When can principals reveal the embargoed information to people like that? Do they have to hold that until?
They have to hold that until Friday.
And I do think, again, just thinking forward, I mean, I agree, I think it would be very useful for them to, an LSAT chair or PTO, LSAT chairs in particular, to have some sort of preview, because it'll just help the principal. So can you give us a sense of when you've had these one-on-ones with principals? I mean, do you have a sense of people being very concerned, or that they can't explain it, or they don't understand it, or do people sort of say, oh, that's what I expected and I get it?
So I think that actually, I've done a large number of these calls, and I think that for the most part, people are like, okay, I understand. I can think maybe one or two of the total calls that I did where people didn't understand where their data and their rating came from, and we walked through metric by metric and explained it. One of the things that I will say that overwhelmingly, whether it be LEA leadership or principals, and in times I've had the conversation with principals and they have their leadership team on the conference call, being able to talk through it and talk about what their messaging is going to look like. Overwhelmingly, one of the things that they've really been thankful and very receptive of are the types of resources that we provided for them. We didn't look in detail, but in the educators page, one of the other things that we provided was a template of a letter as well as a slide deck for principals and school leaders so that they could help explain this to their staff, kind of walking them through the STAR framework as well as the report card, and a template of a letter that they could utilize to send home to parents. So that, in addition to the FAQ documents, which is an interactive website. If you haven't been there already, it's not something you have to print off and sort through, although you could, but you can go through and you can just click on the question that you have and it'll drop down and show you the answer. Makes it a little bit more user-friendly that way.
I mean, along the way, we've seen people, like, there's been some variation on the logistics in, like, when things are getting verified. Some principals don't know, some principals do know, and, like, sort of back in and making sure that information is moving both back and forth and down. And then also, there's been some school leaders that know their data so well and know their schools so well that they're doing their back of the envelope numbers right there and saying,
This is what I thought.
think we're going to be at this, or this. I think that this metric is what's going to hurt me, or this is what I kind of think is where we're going to shake out. In most states, we see a variation.
In some cases, you've seen some LEAs that have had a deeper conversation with their principals than other LEAs. So that's been very evident in some of the conversations where people have been very knowledgeable about the system and what's coming up, and then others may not have been as knowledgeable and they feel like they're playing catch up over the last couple of weeks.
How do you plan on showcasing the report card at EdFest, and what are your plans for boosting the tool and engaging families between now and the opening of the lottery?
So we will have a table at EdFest, as OSSI often does, has multiple tables. We will have tablets and laptops and things like that so that people can explore it. We are putting some information in the bags that people get at EdFest so that they can get information, including a little phone card that tells them where to go. And then we will have our booth fully staffed to be able to answer questions. We also have plans and have already started getting requests to come out into community groups, parent groups, school meetings, and talk about the report card and answer questions. We've thought about going out into libraries and other community centers to be able to walk people through using the tool and help them understand how to use it.
And then I think it's very interesting sort of seeing where we are 2 years later as far as engagement, which you described the teacher retention thing, and then also with the report cards, like we built a lot of lists of organizations, contacts now that we did not have 2 years ago. So we are able to do far more personal communication than we could Chloe, who's on here, is up at those subjects. So we have a lot more now to sort of tap people and have deeper connections with agencies. I've done my fair share of agencies here lately. I've been to an agency until
Into a number. Ed councils.
So yeah, we've gotten around and we can still use those lists.
Just final question for Justin in particular. Now that you all are almost through the finish line here, I know there's a lot of communications work ongoing, but you built the tool, which is what took so much of your team's effort. It would be wonderful to hear from high school at the last meeting of this year how OSSI intends to take up the recommendations of the high school task force. Even if it is, we will look at these and I can commit to having a set of ideas by X date. We've been patient knowing that you had to get all this work done, and I'm hoping that there's something that she'll be able to say at the next board meeting. Thanks.
I don't know.
All right, thank you so much. It's very informative.
Back to us.
I just want to say thank you for the collaboration. It's been it's been a pleasure working with you. Okay, and thank you for listening to us.
Thank you very much.
Oh.
Well, we had Aussie here. I think John Paul had asked for a briefing from Aussie on residency, and I've had several conversations with Shauna about a school in my ward in particular that has had residency verification issues, generally that have been resolved. I'm going to want to talk with her about that at the public meeting in 2 weeks, and there will be, I believe there will be folks from Ellington that come during the public comment period to discuss that. It's really important. We were really hoping that Aussie would work with us on that, and we'd love a briefing on that at the appropriate time. All right, I'll let her. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Committee update? Yeah.
We'll be hoping at 11 a.m. that you're thinking.
No issues. Most of the admin committee work will be covered in John Paul's executive director report at the end. Oh, we did complete John Paul's annual performance review.
As bad as usual.
You're still here.
Still here.
And yeah, it was. He's done a great job at organizing his team. But there are still areas of growth that we discussed. But overall, his performance has improved over last year, and we see him as an asset to the agency and the organization. He's helped us increase our budget, helped us increase our staff, which of course builds our capacity to do things like the report on teacher turnover. All of this is really staff-led now, and that is a big change from 4 years ago, 2 years ago, when most of the major projects were board member driven. That's a big change, and it was reflected in this review.
Regulations and law.
So Laura just had to leave. I don't
Yeah.
know if
Oh, yeah.
you guys had any additional things. That was
Yeah. So what's it? Education standards?
Oh, and research.
Okay, and research.
So I will say the bill related to establishing an independent research collaborative or research practice partnership was reported out from the committee of the whole yesterday, and there are a number of issues with it from my point of view and from the point of view of a lot of the stakeholders that were working with it. And so what I would say is I expect for there still to be some amendments that come forward between now and when it gets voted on a second time in 2 weeks. But there is some concern about there's sort of two concerns. One, how to make sure you can have the right kind of stakeholder input into it so that it both is reflective of the kind of issues that people have, but also viable in terms of number. And then the other issue is how in a city where 4 agencies are going to be at the table and they're all from the executive branch and they're all together, that creates at any meeting sort of a dominance. And the question is, how do you assure that in the end you're going to be able to put out research that is true and accurate, even if it doesn't always look good. And other places that have research practice partnerships don't have the same issue that we have because they don't have the same level of mayoral dominance, and they have a more established research organization involved. So it's going to be an issue, and that's still being worked through.
Karen,
sorry, the final vote on that is this
The 18th.
18th? Yeah, it's the next council meeting, right?
It's 2 weeks from yesterday. That's
So what
It's
about?
the last one.
So, the last time you and I spoke about this, you were concerned that this again is just reflective of the administration having seats at its own table and talking to itself. So is this research collaborative going to exacerbate that issue or rectify it?
I think we'll know in 14 days. I don't think it's going to
Well, that's not a very
exacerbate
good place
it.
to be in terms of
I'm not thrilled with the place that we are.
So So we could be doing more harm than good. by
Well,
saying
I
so.
don't think there's a possibility of this doing more harm than good. I don't think that's really the issue. I think the question is how much value added it will be. To what extent is it really going to take on issues that matter and not be prevented from doing so. So the question is, how good would it be? I think. I
Well,
don't.
yeah, because it's not very good. We're just throwing more money down a hole
Yeah,
where the
but
administration drops itself.
yeah, I agree. I will say at the moment, it's not publicly funded, so I don't, and I will say, I don't quite get that part. So, more to come. But it's an issue, Jack. I mean, there have been, there are efforts to try between, as I understand it, between the chairman and the mayor to try to come to some agreement about how to structure this so that the mayor's people feel comfortable and everybody else feels like they can get independent research. And, I would say at the moment, the balance, I don't feel super comfortable with it.
And I also have concerns with things that are funded through grants and whatnot. I think we saw that with teacher bonuses under impact, right? Those were funded externally. And I don't think that worked out best.
Study abroad program.
Okay.
Karen had to leave. I'll just update the last two, public affairs and outreach. Not too much to update there. We spoke about the recent Empower Ed conference already today, and everyday.
School visit day, so.
Oh yes, we had a great school visit to Excel Academy. There were several members in attendance, me, Marcus, Ruth, and as well as
I was there in
Paul-
spirit.
Me too.
And Principal Pritchard is doing leaps and bounds for that school where they were. It's a fantastic reboot. If you guys have any questions specifically pertaining to that school or single gender schools, feel free to ask any of us and we can give you an update. Ruth had several different questions about the school in question. So, and with that, Everyday Counts Truancy Task Force next meeting is December 18th, so there's been no update since last month. All right.
And I'll say that for the second year in a row, Ward 8 brought home the victory. The scholars. But also our outgoing Ward 5 colleague Mark Jones was honored by the organization for his years of support for the organization and also his close work with my predecessor on the board, William Lockridge. And so it was great to also be in the room to honor his years of service to the board.
And one last update, our next school tour will be in January. It will be Langley. We're currently working on dates now in Ward 5. I'm working with the PTO president, and Paul is working with the PTO president to secure some dates. So we will be back in touch when this date's secured.
I guess it's me.
There you go. NSF.
Okay.
I think we had
Yeah.
a nice big update earlier.
Yeah, I think we've had the ESSA committee continues to meet. The last meeting we kind of went over some of the, not as in much detail as tonight, the presentation tonight, but they were talking about the changes in the look of the report card. And what we did do, Matt, here, is break out to the three ESSA committees, which are, what are they? The three committees.
School resources and funding equity.
Yeah.
Meaningful equity and academic equity.
Yeah. Equity is and we've asked that we continue to have representatives from OSSE on each panel so that we know that we're going in the right direction and looking at these things and how to format and work from here on out. And our next meeting is next Tuesday. Next Tuesday. So we're looking forward to it. So after they launch the report card, we're going into our era of committee work more so than obviously we're coming to present to was occasionally, but we will now be doing mostly committee work. Yes.
With this round done, the report cards are out, have they talked about, or have you talked to them about when we're gonna learn about how they're gonna do the high school growth and how they're gonna do the 5% given timelines on that?
So that's exactly what she's talking about. The committee work is working on that exact issue.
Oh, those are the committees, those are the ESSA task force committees? So one thing I would really request is that some of that there's a real opportunity for people who aren't on the ESSA task force to be part of those discussions. Because those are huge. I mean, those were huge, board discussions. They shouldn't just be a committee. And a task force.
Yeah, I mean, certainly any of the recommendations from the task force will come to the board probably more than once for discussion and things before they would ever become any type of official recommendations for anything. So, yeah, and including a lot of input for the public as well. I mean, it isn't a closed space. The task force needs to also utilize its members to get into public and talk to them about those exact issues too, to make sure that we're doing, making sure that the measured recommendations are the right thing for the district, right?
Student advisory committee?
At our last meeting, we
You
decided.
thought you would get away because you weren't on the list, right?
It's okay, people forgot. It's okay.
No, you weren't. I'm just kidding.
So, we decided to spark a conversation about teacher retention and specifically how it affects students. So we're working to have the student-led conversation about teacher and principal retention in January. And our next meeting is on December 17th. If anyone wants to join us, we're going to be planning the event, and we'll also be talking about how we can launch the mentor program from last year, because we have members, but we want to kick it off. Oh, the event? No, not yet. It's not instituted. That's what they say.
That's
Gonna get better.
right.
Okay.
Great.
So when is it, December 17th?
Yep. Oh.
Thank you. Other discussion? Any other?
That's in my report.
Oh, okay.
Bylaws is to review.
My report.
Oh.
I'll get there, I promise. Great. So if there is no other discussion of other items from members, I can go into my report. Just want to make sure. Okay. So I do have a couple things to report related to our FY 2020 budget. We have had a number of conversations with the Mayor's Budget Office around the FY 2020 budget, and we'll be meeting with them in a budget review team meeting at 4:30 p.m. on Friday. If any members would like to attend, you're more than welcome. We'll be discussing what the difference is between the need for appropriations that the board approved in July versus what the mayor's mark is for the agency. There's a delta of, depending on how you count, about $75 to $100 and something thousand of difference between the two. So we're working on making sure that the full need for appropriations is included, because it goes to our important programs, and if we have to take a cut, it's likely going to be the elimination of most of our programming.
Why is there such a large discrepancy?
So the mark, the way that it's figured each year is based off previous year's funding, and our need for appropriations is not formulated like that. It's based on previous year plus the new things that we believe are important to have, including, for instance, in the FY 2020 budget, the board approved a 3% increase in funding so that we can have the ability to actually give raises to our staff members that work so darn hard every day, and also to help fund professional development activities for the board and for other activities. In addition, we also asked for an additional staff member in our FY 2020 budget, which then is not included, for instance, in the mark. So the mark itself does provide a limited increase over the FY 19 amount, but it does not cover items like the COLA increases that are sort of automatic for district government employees, but the agencies are expected to absorb those costs. That's really hard for us to do because most of our funding is in personnel services. So anything that is beyond what is in the budget for personnel services has to come out of our program funding in order to cover those costs. In addition, the FY19 budget did not include all of the costs for DCHR, Octo, DGS, who have requested additional payments from us for the services that they provide. And that's about $40,000 to $60,000 that we pay other agencies, which they are now assessing, which is the first time, well, last year was the first time that they assessed that. And so in FY 2020, for instance, the funding for the DCHR has gone from about $16,000 to $19,000 based on inflation of their own salary costs, which is a normal, process, but we have to start including that in our budget, and so that's where that delta comes from. Yeah.
The rational way to do that would have been to say, okay, if DCHR had been covering us, and now they're asking us to cover ourselves, that money would have come out of DCHR over to us because there was some amount associated with the services they were providing us. But that's not how.
It's not how it works in government budgeting.
Not how the government budgeting works.
At least for service-based organizations. Now, to be fair, DCHR is also underfunded, as so is Octo, so is DGS, especially for personnel services, for the things that they provide. So, to me, when we're talking about agencies paying other agencies for the services, it seems a little bit like Peter, robbing Peter to pay Paul. The same government agencies.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make sense.
Same taxpayer money.
But it is what it is, and this is what we're working forward. And I did want to note, the DeVore moving over to Aussie has been a big challenge for me because I've had to do all this myself. And I did want to note for the record that even as she's at Aussie, DeVore has been continually helping us and helping me make sure that our budget information is correct and that's going forward. So that goes on the next one. I am very happy to report that our new budget staff member, Roma Battle, will be starting on Monday, which is super exciting. And next hiring announcement is that our new staff assistant will be starting in January. Her name is Lenita Logan, and she'll be joining us from the Smithsonian Institute, which is fantastic as well. So we're really excited to bring on those new people. And the third hiring update that I have is that the ombudsman position has now closed, and Faith and I have reviewed all of the resumes, and we are starting phone interviews on Monday for that position as well. So we're moving forward on getting all of the important positions that we have open filled so that we can continue to work on behalf of those students, which is really fantastic. The next thing I wanted to note is Ruth had made a request related to portfolio types of education, and Alex actually put together a really great memo, and I've included in your packets as well. And we have sent, I believe there is additional information. We'll continue to look for the other articles, but I really appreciate you sending the chocolate article around, and we also put some just background information together. So I wanted to note that in your packet.
Why we're passing this around?
Yes, so feel free if you'd like to.
So our new deputy mayor of education is known for his interest in the portfolio approach to schools in Philadelphia, and now the new chancellor is noted for his approach to portfolio approach to schools in Indianapolis. So clearly, this is the direction that the city plans to go in, and it's it's controversial, and people should know about it as we enter this. So I appreciate the memo, and I would also, as JP said, encourage reading some of the source articles as well, where you'll get sort of some different viewpoints on it.
This will be sent around electronically.
Sure, of course.
Thank you for putting it
Yeah. So the next item on my agenda to talk about is the bylaws. As I noted at our last working session, I was going to work on our bylaws. Actually require us to look at our bylaws every 2 years, and it's about time for us to do so again. The last bylaws were approved a couple years ago, so we're sort of in line with, we're a little early, but that's, I think, okay. So I do have this red line version. I can send it to you electronically for you to look at because the text is a little small. But largely what I've done is consolidate anything that was repetitive, and then I've moved some of the things that we had discussed previously that might be better served in a policy rather than as a bylaw. Bylaws, as part of definition, should not be something that you can waive. And so one of the things that we have had a practice of doing is, for instance, when a member is out of town and needs to participate by phone, we would waive that part of the bylaws, and that's really not an allowed practice. What we would do is waive the policy or waive the rule, but not the bylaw that underlies it. So I've taken out a lot of the things that were more appropriate for a bylaw or for a policy or a rule, and left just the basic framework of how we would operate. Including, I've taken the sort of election process for the student representatives, and I'm going to put that in a policy as well. I'm going to still list that we will have student representatives, but the actual election process will be moved to a policy. The grievance policy, or the grievance process and censure will be moved to a policy, so we can more easily adjust if needed. And the other part that I have taken out, and this is one of the things that I actually wanted to discuss now, was the agenda for the public and meeting and the working session. Those are part of our agenda on page 7, section 4.11. The order of business is in the agenda right now as part of the bylaws, which is, like I said, generally not something that you adjust too much. It is typical, though, to have that order of business as part of the bylaws. But it's something that, like I said, I'd like to discuss now on whether it makes sense for us to continue that, to have it as part of our bylaws, or to be more flexible in terms of the order of business for our meetings. I don't have, frankly, a position either way, but I'd like your input on.
I think that we can remove it, and or I would love to move to a consent agenda model. I mean, there's a lot of this that we can just get out of the way.
What do you think?
So,
I mean, I understand that you're going to change it, but what do you think?
approval agenda, approval minutes, approval, all of that can just be under consent agenda. It's passed around ahead of time, and it's automatically by consent, unless you pull it out separately, unless there's,
Just asking for clarity.
instead of separating each one and asking for a vote, you can just say, under consent agenda, these are we've all reviewed this, does anybody have any problems, blah, blah, blah,
Sure.
under vote, yes. It makes it go a little bit faster.
Yeah, but my concern is that we have a strict format here of how the meeting is going to go. Like we have public comments. I think I have a problem with the fact that people come in and comment after working all day, because we don't start till 5:30 in the evening, so they had to pull their board, they bring their children in to testify about something, and they have to sit there for 3 hours or 2.5 hours before they testify. So I think I would like to take a deeper dive into looking at how we amend this, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because I think it's unfair that people who come to testify might have to wait 3 to 4 to 5 hours to testify.
I completely
Before we
agree
have
with that.
large contingents of public testimony.
I would,
Even if we have a full agenda, if we have several resolutions to give or whatever, meetings last far too long into the evening for people who have come directly from work to participate. So how do we work around that? How do we break down? Somebody was saying that if the issue that they came to testify about is falls under our prelude, under something that we can actually do something about, then we can ask them questions. But those who come in with issues, say about DCPS or something that we don't have, they let them testify, but we don't ask them questions. But how do we work around to shorten our meetings so that everybody can be accommodated, heard, and not sit here for hours.
Public comment usually comes before most of the business of the meeting anyway, right? I mean, the way it's laid out here, it's just the approval of the agenda minutes, then the comments by the president, state superintendent, and then.
I think what Karen means is that folks who are coming to testify as panelists for our things often have to wait a significant amount of time, and we've invited them to come to present testimony for a purpose.
Right.
That's what I mean, I think we'll take a deeper dive into this, is what
Sure.
we're trying to say, but I think this is something that we need to flesh out as a board, and how do we handle these kinds of issues.
I believe when new members joined 2 years ago, we were having the same discussion about the same time, and the members elect were able to participate in the conversation at some level. I would certainly hope that that would be the case again this time, and that no one would object to that.
That's such a great segue to what I was just about to say. Actually. So my recommendation would be that the members here empower me to be able to send this to our members elect, and then have this on the agenda for the January 9th working session, so that we can start talking.
So we're not voting on
No. No, this is not even remotely close to what we should. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was in front of you, because it is one of the things that I promised that I would do for at the last working session.
That's great.
Is that everyone in agreement that yes, I can do that? Okay. The next thing in your packets is the draft calendar for 2019. You'll notice there has been a change on it, which is the change that we discussed to move the working session from January 2nd to January 9th, which is 1 week later. The reason being is January 2nd is the day that our members-elect are sworn in, and they don't get sworn in until, well, it's currently scheduled for 3:30 on January 2nd, but that also requires the council members to be able to come back from the Wilson building, where they have to have a meeting that's supposed to start at 1:30. So the likelihood of them getting there on time is not very high. Like for instance, the ledge meeting that they had yesterday started an hour and a half late, I think, something like that, which is fairly regular for the council. So my concern is that we won't be able to have a meeting on the 2nd, and it's also something that members elect should be able to enjoy and not have to rush around. So that's the one thing that's changed. But the second part of it is I'd also like permission to send this to our members elect so that they can start planning as well for that next thing. Yes, Ashley.
Did we look at NASB and any other?
NASB has not been scheduled yet, so we haven't been able to schedule that around the October session. But we did reschedule around all major holidays and spring break, which is one of the things that we noted this year. And I think
I really want every member and every member elect to look at this calendar and give input. I had to miss a meeting last year because it was changed because a member hadn't looked up what a religious holiday was. It's the only public meeting I've ever missed, and I scheduled travel around this calendar that was circulated to everyone on the board.
So
we need to look at it.
And so when is our
sorry.
when we get together? Strategic plan.
So the strategic planning meeting has not yet been set, also because because I've not been able to consult with all of the members elect yet. I will be meeting with them in the next couple of weeks, and I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to weigh in on that setting at that time. But I'm hopeful to have a strategic planning meeting in January, fairly soon after the swearing in, so that we can move forward as quickly as possible for that. I have been meeting with individual members elect to do orientations for them, to bring them up to speed as quickly as we can on the process of the board and all those types of things. We are also going to be hosting a mock public meeting on December 19th before our meeting, so that members elect will have at least one experience prior to them being on the dais of understanding how a meeting will run, what it looks like, what the times of engagement that they can have for it, and that type of thing. I think that would be, my hope is that is helpful to the members elect as well. So I will get the meeting back to the members-elect as well. But if there are issues that you see as you're reviewing this, please let me know so that we can change it. Because the second part of this is you'll notice it's sort of written in a very formal form. The reason being for this is I publish this in the DC Register, which helps meet our open meeting requirement. But in order to do so, prior to our January 9th meeting, I have to present this information by December 26th. So I need the feedback soon so that if I can make any changes, it will still be published in time for the DC Register, which makes it an official calendar. It can be then changed later, but that's the reason.
Okay. I don't have a problem with the official calendar. I think we need to do a date for, pick a date. I mean, all these other dates are picked.
As soon as I get a chance, I will email the members-elect and ask them to help us pick a date for the strategic planning.
Oh, yeah.
I think that should be here.
I think, yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, it's my presumption that all board members would be eligible to be seated before the second.
So that is an interesting question. So I actually talked to both the member-elect and the Board of Elections today. That the Board of Elections is tentatively scheduled to certify that election on December 14th, which means that he could then be sworn in immediately afterwards and be a member of the board for the December 19th meeting. Board of Elections has notified me that there is a 7-day appeal process that happens after certification. So that would bring the date to December 21st, which is after our December 19th meeting. Now, it's a little bit moot because Mr. O'Leary actually has a commitment on December 19th and can't be at the meeting anyway. But it is one of the things that I have looked at. Yes.
Would he be inaugurated and sworn in the same way as all the other ones on January 2nd?
So that's exactly what we were just talking about. I don't. You're talking about the official swearing in.
Yeah, as opposed to being eligible to vote. Yeah.
So he has to be sworn in order to vote. So if he was at the December 19th meeting, we would need to have a swearing in prior to him taking the dice. But since he won't be able to be there, we actually discussed earlier today that he was comfortable with just doing the swearing in on January 2nd with the rest of the new members, and so that he would be sworn in with everybody else at that swearing in ceremony. Which, by the way, you're all invited to that ceremony as well. It's at the Convention Center at 3:30, January 2nd. It's held. The logistics are all done by the council, so I don't have any. I don't get to set it up, so I don't get to be exactly how it works. But that's the way it is.
Please tell all the members-elect to check their names and spelling.
I will. Thank you.
But presumably, if he elects to be sworn in on the second, the council would add him to that ceremony.
So yes, presumably so. I had already been in contact with the council prior to immediately after the general election, describing the situation and that we would hopefully be able to move forward with this, because the other part is program printing, right? They have to send the program out pretty quickly after an election in order to get it on the next. Anyway, yes, I've been in touch. The last thing that I have on my agenda, and I apologize, has to do with committees for next year. At the working session last month, we did talk about, I asked you to start thinking about potential committees for next year, what their subject matter would be, what their jurisdictions would be, all that type of thing. I'm asking you to continue that thought process, and please send me any ideas that you have so that we can put together some sort of proposal that we can then discuss at our January 9th working session. That's it. I promise.
Committees for next year. That's part of the strategic session, or are we already thinking about?
She said,
So-
think about it.
We should definitely think about it. So the problem is,
Are we going to be
In
changing
order-
them up?
that's
what
the
I'm-
question.
And adding words.
That's the question, yes. In order to have a vote on anything, it has to be discussed at a working session, not just at a strategic planning session. So if we have a strategic planning session prior to the working session and then discuss committees again, then yes, then we would be able to vote on it in our January meeting. But if the strategic planning session happens after our January 9th working session, if we don't also discuss committees at our working session, we would not be able to vote on that at the January meeting, public meeting. So we would have to wait an additional month prior to the committees being set up. We would just continue with the current committees, is what I'm saying, which would be fine. It's just, I'm just trying to move this forward.
He's trying to clarify it gets more
So
foggy.
I would assume that once you talk to the members elect, the hope would be that we could have a strategic planning session at some point between the 2nd and the 9th.
I think that's a great idea, and I will do what I can to make that happen.
Yeah,
Strategic plan.
yeah. So that we don't have to wait that extra month to get.
That would be my hope.
Yeah, because when
But-
you came, when we did it like the next day, right?
After the election, which was terrible.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
But they did it to us too, so it's like.
Yeah. I have nothing else, Madam President.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm sorry. I did want to note that our current policy fellow Brian Robinson. Hi, Brian. So this is his last working session with us, and it's really been fantastic having him here. He will be at the public meeting on December 19th, but this is the best forum to be able to acknowledge his really helpful work with us over the past 4 months, 3 months, something like that. It's been great having you, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, thank you, Brian.
All right.
Now,
Say something.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Third.
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 7:03.
Oh shit.
That's it, 3.